Hi loves, welcome to Discover You podcast. This is a community where you can show up exactly as you are, learn, grow, and discover how to stand in the power of who you want to be. I'm your host, Shar. Welcome, and let's dive in and discover you. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Discover You podcast. We are diving into the first episode of March 2023, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about living authentically and aligned with yourself and trusting your own intuition, your own feelings, truly just listening to yourself. And this feels very in alignment with the episodes of all of 2023 where we talked about goal setting, taking the pressure off in January. And then in February, we talked about how to stop burning out, how to avoid burnout, all of the stuff around just our well-being and our happiness. So before we dive into today's episode, be sure that you're following along the podcast wherever you're listening, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, watching over on my YouTube channel. Be sure that you're following along, subscribed, and that you're perhaps leaving a rating review on the podcast wherever you're listening. It means so much to me to support the podcast, help other people get this content out for free, and we can help support them in whatever they're going through as well. Also, on top of that, be sure that you're following me over on social media. Instagram is where I live, but all the links are down below for Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. It's all there for you guys to check out. So let's dive in to today's episode on the Discover You podcast. All right, today we're talking all about being authentic, aligning with ourselves, listening to our own voice inside of us that's telling us to make a decision, to do something, to change something, to work on something, or to just be. So I really tried over the last decade to really align with who I am, live authentically, and make decisions out of what I truly love and what I truly want to do and what I truly believe in. And more so in the last probably 6 months, I've really been in this space of trying to align with how I'm feeling that day, taking off the pressure of like, well, I should work out today, but I'm really not feeling that good. I pulled my neck, or I have a headache, or I'm PMSing, whatever the story is. Allowing yourself to align with that feeling, that sensation, and changing something about the decision you make. I oftentimes think that we just do things because there's an expectation or a pressure in society that we should just be doing, and we should be eating well this meal, or we should be working out, or we should be hanging out with this person or this family member because it's what you should be doing. And like, honestly, we're just shooting on ourselves, and it's so irritating. The culture of like doing more isn't always better. And I've really focused the last like couple of months, really aligning with like the moon cycles, my natural cycle of my hormones, my cyclical living, as I call it, into like understanding the different phases of the woman's cycle throughout the month and how that changes your mood, changes your body, how it looks, how it feels. So I've really been kind of in that space, which I'll talk more about in another podcast episode, the cyclical living, because I'm kind of still learning and doing that. But this ties into being authentic and being true to yourself in what you feel, whether it's like hormones and the moon cycles is your thing or not, that's totally fine. But it's in every moment of every decision that you make in your life. Is it in alignment with what you believe in, what your morals are, how you feel? Are you forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to do just because you feel pressure that you should, or someone's telling that you should, or society dictates that you should be working on your summer bod, or whatever the hell these silly terms are that we get thrown onto us, right? So I think starting out, asking yourself, are you living authentically to who you are? And this is something that's been really powerful for me, is really sitting with myself and going, okay, what does Shar want? Do I want to, have a 6-pack? Or do I want to go run a marathon? Or Do I want to go take that course or take that class or do this thing? And are you just doing it? Am I just doing it because of a pressure to do it? Or am I doing it because I actually feel aligned with this? So it really starts out with like asking yourself, kind of gauging where your authenticity is sitting, and are you living in alignment with what you want? Because I think that a lot of us aren't. I think we fall into these traps and these pressures. So authentically living is really about letting go of all of the resistance and allowing yourself to lean into what feels good. So what feels happy, abundant, exciting, really tapping into what you love. So I think that the first step in doing this, and instead of forcing ourselves into something and allowing ourselves to lean into experiences, into life, into situations, it's really figuring out what you desire and what you want. And that can come in many, many avenues. And we're talking on a broad spectrum here. It's not just about your body and your fitness. It could also be about your mental well-being. It could also be about goals that you have going into the future. Maybe you're planning to do a degree to get a certification or whatever, right? This can come in so many different aspects of our lives. So it's really just take from this what you feel resonates with you and what works for you, right? Because we're all in a different place. We're all doing different things. So some of the steps and the tips that I want to share with you on how we can live authentically and how we can truly align with this energy is the first one being listening to your gut. Your gut is your biggest telltale for anything in life. You have that immediate, that feeling in your gut where you have this like, ooh, and it's like almost like a shooting feeling when something is off, when someone, manipulates or says something nasty or says something terrible and you don't agree with them, whether it's having to, force yourself to do a certain workout or go join a fitness club or there's so many scenarios of like uneasy feelings that happen in your body. And this is more specific for me in people than activities or things, but like, even saying that, I am thinking of a scenario where like my boyfriend is like, oh, you want to go do kayaking? And I'm like, ugh. I get this like a yucky feeling within my body. And I'm like, there's no freaking way I'm going kayaking. Like, not interested at all. Not that I'm not open to it, but it's not something that like, I'm like, ooh, I want to go do that. So that's just one example, but there's many more where there's people that will give you that feeling as well, where you have this unsettled feeling in your body. And a lot of the times we ignore this sensation. We ignore our gut response, which is linked to our brain. Our gut is so powerful. That is linked to all of the hormones that are surging into your brain. Serotonin's created in the gut, and then it transports up into your brain. So like everything is working in a system, in a cyclical movement through the body. And we often just ignore that sensation and that feeling. And I think that is where like our first key thing is like, do you want it or don't you? And if you have that gut feeling of like, ooh, and there's resistance and there's like angst and they're like, you're like, oh no, like that's something you have to listen to, that we have to allow ourselves to tap into and be like, hey, I don't feel good about this decision, this job change, this partner, this friendship, whatever it is. This is always evolving. And the more that we can listen to our body, it's designed to protect us. It is designed to allow you to be authentic to yourself. And we have to listen to that, because if you're ignoring those cues in your body, that feeling you get, then you're not living authentically. You're not allowing yourself to live in alignment with what feels good for you. So if you get that feeling in your gut, starting to explore that and go, okay, like, why is this not feeling good? Why am I having this sensation? What is it about this person, situation, thing that I'm like, ooh? So starting to ask yourself those questions, and you can just sit and write this on paper. You can journal it out. You can sit and meditate. You could go for a walk and just like let your brain kind of like process these things. You could wash the dishes and just, be mindful about like, okay, I'm just going to wash the dishes and like think about this thing that happened earlier today. So kind of starting to ask yourself those questions of like, what is that and why is it happening? And then from that space of asking and turning inwards to understand ourselves, we then can start to move from the gut into our heart space and start to ask ourselves, okay, well, I had this reaction. So now in my heart, how do I feel about this? Okay, well, I don't feel good about going kayaking, and I don't really feel like that's something that I'm passionate about. So maybe I can now start to think about, well, what does bring me passion? What does make me happy? What does bring me joy? So if we're talking about a specific, activity like kayaking, it's like, okay, I don't really want to go kayaking, but like I'm good with nature walks, or I'm good with going on a hike, or I'm good with swimming, but like finding a thing and a passion within you that's like, hey, what do I want to do versus what am I feeling obligated to do because someone else likes it? Or, the same thing goes for a workout. It's like we often just like force ourselves into this thing, whatever the thing workout is, to attain a goal that is not really serving our best well-being. And you see that a lot in fitness, where it's like this push of, okay, well, I should do this HIIT class so I lose 10 pounds, or so I can get my beach body, or like whatever the narrative is that's in your head and that is being projected onto society of like having the perfect body and all these things. I think that we often force ourselves into that space instead of living in our heart space. And this really is like something that I've worked on over the last year with working out, because I always feel this like, pressure that I need to stay strong and be healthy and be fit and have this physique. It's also not completely aligned with the way that I feel in my body. Sometimes I'm bloated, sometimes I'm crampy, sometimes I'm in a bad mood. Sometimes those things don't feel nourishing to my soul. So I tend to lean into things like yoga and meditation and going for a walk and changing the route of what you're doing. So your goal can still exist to lose weight or to get more toned, but you can pivot those things to something that's more heart-centered, where you're feeling that in your heart space of like, this is what I'm passionate about. This brings me joy. Because if we're not tapping into that heart center and we're not tapping into the joy and the happiness of the thing we're doing, the people we're spending time with, the activity we're partaking in, then we're living completely unauthentic and not in alignment with ourselves. And it's okay if you're here. It's okay if you're doing these things. The first step is to really start to bring the awareness into, how can I be more in alignment with myself and more true to who I am, and trusting myself to do this and starting to pivot and shift those things. Because without the awareness and the understanding of ourselves, we can't start to tap into the gut or the heart space or allow ourselves to start to shift and move the pendulum. So these things take time, and there's a process along the path of this where you start to tune in and start to become more aware and aligned with who you are. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to start to do things that feel really good, or to say no to the thing that doesn't feel good, because that's not what life is. We want to feel good. We want to feel excited, and life is so short and it moves like a flash of lightning. Like, it is moving so fast. Months sail by and you're like, where did the months go? And I was spending the last how many months doing this activity that I hated just because I felt like I should be. So that whole shoulding on ourselves, right? All right, so bringing it all back. First step being listen to your gut. Tap into that sensation, that understanding, and start to ask yourself questions. Step 2, tapping into heart space. What do you love? What do you feel passionate about and excited about and that you want to do? And then thirdly, moving into more reflection of, are the people in your life the ones that are supporting you and serving your best well-being? So this can be a really challenging space to exist in, and a really hard space to navigate, because people are so impactful of your well-being. And they say that the 5 people you spend the most time with is what you become. And I've always tried to remember that in hard times and hard moments, because people are impactful. The support system you have, the partner you have, the coworkers you have, the people that are surrounding you every day, day in and day out, They will determine the type of person you are and whether you're living in alignment. And if you're surrounded by people that are superficial and vain and ego-based and living in ego, people that are not connected to themselves, you will start to become that if you're not already in that space. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with different types of people. But if we're wanting to tap in, wanting to live authentically and trust ourselves and trust the process, we have to start to look at the people around us and start to determine whether or not these people are serving our highest, greatest good and our mental well-being too. Because again, life is much too short to be having all this resistance in the activities we do, the workouts we do, the people we spend time with. I think that coming back to just the root of it is really starting to tune in and listen to ourselves. And that's how we become trusting of our own intuition, our own well-being, is by asking ourselves questions, listening to how our body responds to things, and looking at how we're existing in our life. Because if you want to live more authentic and you want to be more aligned, it's so important to have that relationship where you're with yourself, where you're asking questions, you're having time to be reflective and introspective of the decisions and the choices you make. And as you cultivate listening, tapping into your heart space and being with yourself, you start to then trust yourself, and the trust will build over time where you'll be in a situation or scenario where you're like, right away, you're like, nope, I don't like this. Like, I'm out. And I've reached a point now where I do that, where I catch myself in a moment of like resistance and angst. And I'm like, nope. Like my whole body's like, big X, like run the other direction. So as we cultivate this over time, we learn to really trust within and trust ourselves and know that we know what's best for us, because we live in a culture and a society where everyone else thinks that they know best, whether it's practitioners, doctors, your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your boss, whoever it is in your life, social media, influencers. People always have opinions. People always have their own trajectory forward. They will be impressionable and start to push those beliefs and thoughts onto you. And that's fine, but you also have to be aligned with yourself first to be able to navigate all of the roadblocks and the maze of things that are thrown in front of you, because life's challenging enough. But then if you're not in that alignment with who you are and trusting yourself, you're not going to know how to navigate that. I really, implore you guys to just go about listening to yourself, starting with those small steps of listening to your gut. Tap into your heart space. What do you truly, truly love? And start to have that reflection of the people that you surround yourself with and spend your time with, and the things that you're doing around you, because they will have the greatest impact on how authentic you can be with yourself and allow you to build that trust within yourself through these steps to be able to trust the decisions you make, trust your body, trust yourself, to live more aligned and to live more happy and to be more excited about your life too, because life is way too short. And if we're not happy and excited and aligned with it, then what the heck are we doing, right? So I hope that these tips and tricks have given you guys some insight into how to start to tap into being a little bit more authentic to yourself and allow you to just grow and continue to discover you, right? That's why we're here on the podcast, is to uncover and discover things about ourselves and grow into the best versions of who we are. So I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. It felt very fitting for 2023 as we grow and expand through this year together. So be sure that you're following on the podcast wherever you're listening, and that if you feel called to leave a review or a star rating, share this podcast with anyone you think that might be needing it right now. And of course, hit me up on social media. Follow me over on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Links are all down below. I would love to connect and hear from you guys. And of course, have an amazing rest of your day. And I will talk to you guys in the next episode on the Discover You podcast. Bye, guys.